The bus ride was so long that I got sleepy and laid down and took a nap in Nicole's lap. When I woke up, I saw that I drooled all over her leg. Once we were at Neverland, we rode the rides and watched a movie in a full-size theater. I remember walking up to a concession stand that was filled with popcorn and candy. I had planned on just drooling at the snacks from behind the glass because I didn't have any money. But then the guy working the counter said, "Do you want anything? Everything is free here." If this had been a movie, we would have cut to a trippy echo sequence at that moment. Everything is free. Everything is free. I'd never heard anything so glorious in my brief little life. I gobbled up Sour Patch Kids and Raisinets and Twizzlers and then stayed awake for the entire bus ride home, all hopped up on sugar. The first ethnic Dorothy, at my elementary school at least. I booked one of the most important roles of my career far away from Hollywood when I played Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. No, not on Broadway, but even better, at Valencia Valley Elementary School. The school put on The Wizard of Oz every year, and the teacher in charge was this biggish woman who always wore oversized muumuus and had long gray hair. During story time, she'd make kids rub her bunions. I was totally disgusted by it at the time, and now that I look back on it, I wonder, how did this bitch not get fired? But that's an aside. The Wizard of Oz was her passion, and she was obsessed with making it as good as it could be. The year that I could audition, she was practically salivating at the chance to have a professional actress in the lead role. She went through the dog and pony show of holding auditions, but I knew I was going to get it. Hello, I had credits. I was such a little monster back then that I'm surprised I didn't walk in and hand her my resume. Afterward, I stood in a circle of girls who had tried out for the part and put on a show of asking everyone who they thought was going to get it. Even at the time, I knew that was bratty behavior, but did it anyway. Diva antics aside, the show was a hit. In the video, you can see me hitting every mark and making sure I enunciate every line. My parents were just as proud then as they were when I landed a role on national television. My mom even stayed up the night before, covering my shoes with gold glitter and red spray paint. The Wizard of Oz was definitely the highlight of my elementary school years. Even though I was still just in the single digits, it was pretty obvious that school and I weren't destined to get along. I got suspended twice before I even made it to 5th grade. My family moved a lot, and in total, I went to 3 different elementary schools. I was never nervous about being the new kid, though, and always had a pretty easy time making friends. In 2nd grade, I met my friend Madison, who is still my best friend to this day. Other friendships didn't have quite the same staying power. In 4th grade, I befriended this girl, Sarah, who was a total tomboy and kind of a bully. One day, she decided to spin me around by my hair. I screamed and screamed for her to stop, trying to keep up before she ripped my ponytail completely off my head. When she wouldn't stop, I resorted to more drastic measures and bit the hell out of her arm. It was a little bit of real-life foreshadowing of the Glee episode where Santana gets her ass kicked by Lauren and resorts to biting. That aside, somehow I got suspended and that bitch Sarah got off scot-free even though she'd started it. Unlike the creepy bunion teacher, not every teacher at the schools I attended was stoked about having an actress in their midst. At one school, it was clear from day one that the principal had it out for me and didn't consider acting a worthwhile pursuit. My parents were constantly fighting with the school to get it to recognize my on-set tutor hours, and you could see the look of disdain on the principal's face every time my mom would try to talk to her about how I was going to miss a few more days of school because of shooting. Like anyone learns anything in elementary school anyway. One day I was sitting in class minding my own business when I was suddenly called into the principal's office. "Naya," she said with all the seriousness of a counter-terrorism agent interrogating a member of ISIS. "Do you recognize this note?" She slid a piece of paper across the table, and sure enough, I did recognize it. It was a note I'd written to my friend Kate about a boy in our class. "Johnny smells so bad," I'd scrawled in pencil across a piece of wide ruled paper. Sometimes I want him to die." When I nodded, she sat back smugly in her chair. "This," she said, "is a very serious matter." She called in my mom and announced that I was getting suspended yet again, but this time for making a death threat against a fellow student. My mom is not the kind of woman to take anything lying down, but I think at this point she'd had enough of this school and decided she wasn't wasting any more time on this woman than she already had. She just shrugged, told me to gather up my stuff, and we went home. It was the one time in my life that I didn't get in trouble with my parents for getting in trouble at school. Instead, I played in the park, watched tons of Nickelodeon, and had a pretty nice little vacation. Even as a child, I knew that acting was a job, and I liked that feeling of responsibility. I liked to work hard and felt fulfilled knowing that I was good at something. Sometimes this work ethic leaked into other areas of my life. I was competitive and didn't just play. I couldn't understand how other kids could do something and not try their absolute best. For example, between the ages of 6 and 10, I was an absolute beast when it came to handball. How this became my passion du jour, I have no idea, but I practiced at home so I could dominate the playground handball scene at recess. I was the champ of the court, and I got real mean when other people didn't take it as seriously as I did. In my grade, there was this one girl, Melissa, who was rumored to have been a crack baby or something, and she had a deformed hand. When we played handball, we turned into a bunch of trash-talking 7-year-olds, and Melissa made the mistake of calling me poor. I turned around and yelled, "Oh yeah? Why are you playing handball anyway when you only have one hand?" Then I went right back to whacking the shit out of that ball. I later apologized to Melissa because as soon as I walked off the court, the other kids were like, "Yo, Naya, that's messed up." And as the sweat dried off my forehead, I had to admit that, yes, it was really fucked up. So, lesson learned. Not all is fair in the name of love and handball.